How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your monthly horoscope for January 2019 for Aquarius. Happy New Year's, guys. I'm super excited for you guys this month because, well, let's kind of get into it. I really do think that this month is going to be kind of draining for the majority of the time until, like, the end of the month, I think, is when things are really going to start picking up for you guys. So let's kind of go into it. To start off the month, on January 1st, we have Mars entering Aries, and we have the Sun-Saturn conjunction. So this is going to be interesting for you guys, because Mars has been fucking you guys up for a minute now. You had Mars retrograding into your first house, going back into your 12th, going through first, then it went to your second house of Pisces, where it was just like money draining. As Mars enters Aries, and it's in your third house of, the third house has a lot to do with, you know, education on like a smaller level, short distance travel, your environment, your siblings. Also has a lot to do with Mercury type things of, like, you know, communicating, speech and writing and things like that. The third house is also how you really utilize yourself in a very modern sense. Meaning, like, the first house is who you are, the second house is what you have, the third house is how you use it. And as Mars goes into his home sign of Aries, I feel like you guys are going to feel ready to go, ready to communicate, ready to kind of start the new year off with a bang, being able to kind of get yourself into a good routine, get yourself into good habits, doing something, and just having more energy than you've had for the past couple months. So that's really positive. But the Sun-Saturn conjunction, I think, is going to be very realistic and very hardcore. As Saturn transits your 12th house, where, you know, we're talking about fears, we're talking about hidden and repressed things that you have about yourself. Saturn's going through your 12th house for another little while, and it's going to be showing you, you know, what is limiting you, what is bringing, you know, what is kind of putting you in a box that you've repressed, that you're not really acknowledging, that's limiting you. Saturn's also wanting you to discipline yourself more on getting out of those bad habits and helping you be more efficient, being more, having more security in a sense. And as the sun hits Saturn, this is resetting that Saturn cycle. Saturn's now out of his shadow. He's direct. He's flying forward, about to conjunct Pluto. Ooh. And as the sun hits Saturn, I think this is going to be a big time for you guys to really settle in with yourselves and go, what changes do I need to make, and what is being repressed, and what do I need to acknowledge? The Sun-Saturn thing is going to make you kind of feel like, oh, there's like all of these problems and these hidden things that are just limiting you and constricting you, and it's going to feel for a little bit. Like that Mars and Aries in your third house is going to be like, I'm ready to do things, but the Sun-Saturn conjunction is kind of like, only because I feel like I have no other choice. However, this is just going to be a big time to discipline yourself on bringing up these things that you don't always, you know, bring up, things that you don't always acknowledge, and things that you repress, and really handling them in a mature and sober way. So that is going to be a pretty big deal as we start the new year. Moving forward, on January 5th, the next big thing, we have the new moon and the solar eclipse in Capricorn on the south node, while the south node's in Capricorn in your 12th house. This is a lot because the 12th house is a really weird place to talk about. Like, in traditional astrology, it's like anything in the 12th house is like, you're going to die in a foreign country in the middle of war. You're like, what? And the 12th house in a modern sense is very spiritual, has a lot to do with dreams, has a lot to do with the subconscious, you know, what you repress, what you don't always acknowledge. And so it's a very tricky place to really put a pin on. It's also the house between worlds. It's a blinding house. It's, you know, the 12th house is representative of that area right above the horizon on the eastern side, where the sun rises and, you know, things, you know, everyone's waking up, everyone's blinded by the sun, trying to drive to their commute to work. So when we have this new moon and this eclipse in your 12th house, this is going to be a big exclamation point, because it is an eclipse on what are you repressing? What are you not acknowledging? What needs to be addressed? And this is in Capricorn, where we're talking about foundations, we're talking about framework, we're talking about structure. And as we have this south node, this lunar eclipse, the solar eclipse in your 12th house, this is going to be a big time to bring all of that energy of like, hey, what do I need to focus on? What needs to what needs to come out? What needs to come alive? What needs to be put out there? And what needs to be, you know, put in a realistic sense? However, also on the same day, Mercury goes into Capricorn in your 12th house, where it's going to be a little bit difficult for things to make a lot of emotional sense, meaning Mercury in Capricorn wants to get things done in a very efficient way. You know, Mercury in Capricorn's like, I was saying this in my Taurus video, it's like going to the permit office to get a permit so you could build, you know, something going on in your house or something like that. But as Mercury goes into your 12th house, it's this hidden area. It's a really weird area, and you're going to feel like you're ready to get all these things done, but there's going to be a lot of hidden problems that you're not going to be prepared for in order to see. So be prepared to not be prepared. Like, expect the unexpected with that. Then, moving forward on January 7th, we have Venus entering Sagittarius. Hallelujah! Because Venus has been in your 12th house, not your 12th house, your 10th house, retrograding in Scorpio, going through all of that, career stuff changing, public image stuff changing, all of that fun stuff. But as Venus goes into Sag, it's like, it's time to go have fun with your friends. It's time to connect more to people, connect to bigger groups. Maybe you're midheavens in Sagittarius if you're an Aquarius rising. And as Venus goes into Sagittarius, where she's wanting to bring a lot of value, she wants to connect things, make things beautiful in that Sagittarian way of exploring, of freedom, of adventure, of travel. And this is in your 11th house of friendships and communities and big groups of people. And I think as Venus goes into Sagittarius, this is going to be a big time to really find some solace in your friends and to find some fun and to find some expression, to get yourself away from all the craziness that you've been having with yourself and have some fun with some people. Go and explore that. Jupiter is also in Sag in your 11th house. So this is a big time for, bigger groups for you to be introduced to, a lot more friends that are of positive nature to be coming towards you. So as Venus goes in there, it's time to start valuing your friends and start valuing who you connect with and start exploring that more. Also on the 7th, we have Uranus going direct in Aries. And this is kind of weird because Uranus is in your guys' 3rd house. And as Uranus goes direct in your 3rd house, where he kind of retrograded back, where it was kind of like, Uranus is explosions and Aries is kind of like achievement. You could have had a lot of ideas coming in, a lot of new thoughts coming in, and a lot of new ways of expressing yourself. And as Uranus goes direct, it's going to be like pushing those out there and actually having the mojo to go and do that and to actually say those things and express those things and be determined and stuff like that before Uranus goes into Taurus into your 4th house. Then on January 10th, we have the Sun-Pluto conjunction. I think that is going to be a little rough for you guys because it is in your 12th house, and this is going to be bringing up a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety because you want things to look a certain way. It has to look just right on the surface. And guess what? It's not going to look that way. You can't have expectations on these things. You have to be flow with. And as the sun hits Pluto, I think this is going to bring a lot of fear and things not working out the way that you want them to. But I think the challenge with this is taking off the expectation of what it's supposed to look like and actually putting that emotional energy and investing it into being willing to do whatever it takes in order to get that, whatever that is for you, done. So don't be afraid. Just don't hold a lot of expectations. This is your 12th house we're talking about. We don't always know what it's going to look like on the other end. After that, on the 11th, we have Mercury hitting Saturn. And this is when it's going to be a little bit tricky because as we have that Sun-Pluto conjunction and things are a little bit raw and real, Mercury's going to come and hit Saturn the next day, where Mercury hitting Saturn's like, okay, like what about these things that I'm repressing or I'm not acknowledging? What's going on in my subconscious? What am I not being aware of? That is limiting me. And Mercury is going through Capricorn where it's going to be, Mercury does do pretty well in Capricorn, but it's also not as fluent in Capricorn. Mercury in Capricorn is just trying to get the message across, say what needs to be said, get it done, get out of there. And as Mercury hits Saturn, where it's going to be very realistic of like what is limiting you, what is creating boundaries around you, and this is, again, the 12th house of hidden stuff, your subconscious, repressed stuff. It's just going to become, basically the Mercury-Saturn conjunctions, like you're going to become very aware of what is limiting you and what is being repressed that is literally holding you back through everything else. So be prepared for that. And it's not a bad thing. This is a good thing. You want to realize these things. You want to know how you're holding yourself back so you can keep moving forward. On this day, though, don't get so locked up in the idea of like, oh, I'm holding myself back. Oh, this all sucks. Just look at it for what it is and make new changes. Do something different. After that, well, actually on the same day, oh shit, I didn't talk about this in my other video. January 11th, Jupiter also squares Neptune. And so as Jupiter's in your 11th house, Neptune's in your 2nd house. This is, again, it's kind of like, Neptune's in your 2nd house of what you possess, what you own, your money. Neptune's not really a big deal to really go into that. But Jupiter squaring it is going to make it feel like there's all these different possibilities with who you're connecting yourself with, who your friends are, or your influencers are, and what does that really mean for you and what you have and what you can create. It's kind of like Jupiter in your 11th house is like a good friend. It has like these ideas and these aspirations, and you're like, I could do something like that. I can do that. I can have that, and I can make that happen. So as Jupiter does square Neptune, it's going to feel like there's a lot of possibilities in what you want to create and what you want to own, but it's also going to give you a lot more of a black and white sense of what is possible, what is not possible, and Jupiter and Sagittarius is helping you direct that energy into like, okay, let's pick one of these roads and go down it. After that, though, like that's like the first part of the month. The second part of the month is when, man, we go into it. So we get a couple days off. January 16th, though, 5 days later, we have the Sun conjuncting the South Node. And this is when it gets really interesting because the South Node is, you know, what's the best way to put it? It's what we're naturally good at. It's what we come into this world gifted with, almost in a sense. It's our past. It's what we've done before, and our North Node is kind of like where we're going. But the South Node is also important because it's what we've learned on the way. It's what we naturally have with us. And as the Sun hits the South Node and it's in Capricorn and it's in your 12th house, this is going to be a time of realizing what you've done in the past that's worked for you in order to kind of get a grip and to kind of restructure these things that are limiting you and these things that aren't necessarily working. And as the Sun hits the South Node, this is going to be a big awareness time of like, okay, what have I done in the past that's worked and how can I bring that and utilize that today? After that, 2 days later, on January 18th, we do have Mercury hitting Pluto, where again, a little bit more of that anxiety, a little bit more of those things feeling like they're falling apart, big, you know, realizations of yourself. You know, Mercury is kind of like a megaphone on planets, and so when Mercury hits Pluto, it's going to be like, Pluto's in your 12th house, like, everything's falling apart. You don't have to feel that way. It's just going to feel like there's a lot of huge foundational changes happening, and it's going to be very prevalent. And the biggest thing is you just got to be aware of that, because now that you know that, you can make the changes and you can take the action that you need in order to make those changes. 1 second. I just remembered. I was like, is Mars squaring Pluto this month? And Mars is squaring Pluto on the 1st. Okay, never mind. We're not going to talk about that then. Anyway, moving forward. On the same day, on January 18th, Venus trines Mars. So as Venus is in Sagittarius, you're with your friends, you're finding a lot of solace, you're finding a lot of comfort and value with connecting with more people in your networks. Mars is in Aries, where it's kind of like, you know, what are you doing with it? What are you doing with these friends? Venus is trining Mars, where Venus is like, hey, you've got these good friends, communicate the message you want to say. Do the things that you want to do. Like, let them inspire you to take that action and to take that initiative with expressing yourself, with doing things different, with, I guess the best way to put it is, you may be feeling very uncomfortable and very vulnerable this month, but Venus trining Mars is going to give you that positive note to help you move forward and to kind of, you know, yeah, sure, things may suck, but put a smile on your face and it's kind of better. I know that sounds very vague or whatever, but yeah. Anyway, going into January 20th, this is the big, big day out of the whole month. Sun goes into Aquarius. Full moon in Leo, total lunar eclipse. Venus squares Neptune. Mars squares Saturn. Big, 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 big stuff happening on January 20th. As the Sun goes into Aquarius and it's hitting your ascendant or it's hitting your sun sign and you're starting to feel more alive, starting to feel just more for you. It's like also your birthday. Happy birthday coming up, I should say. I'll say that in February though. Mars, or I should say, hold on, before we get to Mars, as the Sun goes into Aquarius, you're wanting to put all these pieces together, you're feeling more of yourself. This full moon in Leo is happening, and it's a total lunar eclipse. It's not on the nodes where the nodes are in Cancer and Capricorn, but it's still an eclipse. It's at 0 degrees Aquarius in Leo. And this is kind of going, hey, who are you? Sun is in the 1st house. And what about other people do you like? What about other people do you love? What are other people trying to come in and give you that love? Because as the moon's in Leo in your 7th house, this is like really finding the power, really finding the positivity and that love and that heart energy with the relationships that you have in your life. And not just 11th house relationships of friendships and groups, but 7th house relationships of individual, of one-on-one level. The moon, that full moon in Leo may have someone, you know, an important relationship come to you and they're like, hey, you can do this. You have the power. You have, you know, all that Leo energy is going to be kind of put onto you. And it's just going to make you feel like, where do I need to value these people? Where do I need to value myself? And how can I really live out this energy? It's going to be very inspiring, but also very critical in a sense. And the reason why I say critical is because Mars is also squaring Saturn. And as Mars is in your 3rd house where you're looking at different ways to do things, you're trying to understand different ways to do things and actually understand how to put yourself out there in a take action on these bigger things. Saturn is in your 12th house, where it's like there's these limiting beliefs that you have about yourself and about your subconscious that are holding you back. And this Mars square Saturn is like, where do you need to discipline yourself? Like, it's not about whether or not you believe it. It's not whether or not if it's true or not. It's about these limiting beliefs are halting your actions, and it's about disciplining yourself on restructuring your belief system in order to fit a more positive path for you in order to achieve more, in order to go for more. It's like, if you believe that you can't do anything, well, that's a shitty belief, because then you're just not going to be able to do anything, because that's what you believe. But if Saturn's in your 12th house in Capricorn, it's like, at the end of the day, what are you trying to believe? What are you trying to get together? And as Mars is in Aries, it's like, yeah, I have all these great ideas. I'm finding new ways to go about my energy. Change your beliefs. Like, figure out a way to get that limitation off of yourself and go, this isn't true. I can do more, and I'm capable of doing more. I'm capable of doing better, and I'm capable of doing what I want. So that's going to be a big deal. And as Venus squares Neptune on the same day, this is going to be an interesting look, because your friends are going to be like, hey, we want to do this. We want to go here. Maybe your friends are like, we want to go on a far distance, travel, or a far place. Do you want to come with us? And you're like, ooh, I don't really have the money. Or maybe Venus is in Sagittarius and she's in your 11th house. You're having more fun. You're going out with all these people, but it may be a little bit more of a stress on your income, maybe a little bit stress on your money. Don't be too worried about that. But the biggest thing is, again, with this on the same day as the sun goes into Aquarius and this full moon in Leo, just experience what other people are really wanting to share with you and feel that love, feel that energy. Let it be brought into your life, because I feel like that's also going to help you take that initiative with those changes that we were talking about with Mars squaring Saturn. So moving forward, last couple of days of January, on the 21st, we have Venus conjuncting Jupiter in your 11th house. This is like, I don't even know what to say. Something good's probably going to happen with your friends. You may be just connecting to the right group that just fits your beliefs, that just fits your ideals, that you really value, and it's just, it's good. So be excited about that. Just better things happening with your friends and your community and your groups and your networks. Maybe your midheaven's in your 11th house, so this does have stuff to do with your career. But also on the 21st, we have Mercury hitting the South Node. And as Mercury hits the South Node, when we were talking about this earlier with the Sun hitting the South Node, it's kind of like, feeling that energy of like having to go backwards in order to move forward. Mercury hitting the South Node is understanding that. Mercury hitting the South Node is like, hey, I did do something in my past that did really work. Like, let me look back at that and see how I can implement that, what I did back then into the now and see if that works. And so Mercury hitting the South Node is kind of like, again, looking backwards in order to move forward. So that's going to be kind of a tricky thing, but just be aware that you're going to have to look at what you've done in the past that worked in order to do whatever you got to do right now for it to work. After that, January 23rd, Mercury moves into Aquarius, into your first house, where you're feeling yourself. You're finally feeling like you can actually express yourself in a better way. You can actually, put the pieces together. You can actually just say the things that you've been needing to say, and also make the changes that you've been wanting to make with your communication, with your mindset. Aquarius is all about putting the little pieces together and making it into a whole picture. But then after that, on the 25th, Mars is going to trine Jupiter. And Mars is in your third house of like your capabilities and what you're kind of doing and how you're expressing that. And Jupiter's in your 11th house of friendship, so it's kind of like your friends are going to be very much like, hey, you can do this. Your friends are going to be very supportive of you moving forward, of you communicating what you want to communicate, changing your message, just putting yourself out there more. So that is going to be positive. And then the most positive thing is happening at the end of this month for you guys. And that's the Mercury Cazimi with the Sun at 8 degrees Aquarius. Why this is important is because you had Mars fuck you guys up this summer at 9 degrees Aquarius. And as Mars is going through your first house, you're making all of these personality changes. You're figuring out what works and what doesn't and all these issues. As Mercury goes Cazimi with the Sun at 8 degrees, I think this is going to be a final fruition of that, of like, okay, now that I've done this change, I've made these changes, I've severed this, I've cut that, I've been focusing more on that. The Sun Mercury Cazimi is like, finally it's all making sense. Finally it's all coming together. And this is about the first house. This is about yourself. This is about your personality. It's about who you are. And this is just understanding yourself on a very deeper level, on a mercurial level and a solar level. Like actually feeling that difference, actually understanding and really seeing those differences, seeing what can be brought together, seeing what is understood. And so I really do think January 29th is going to be a really big deal for you guys. But after that, that's basically it. That's your January of 2019. I do think that this month is going to be a little bit difficult for you guys, but I don't think it's going to be like that forever. If it is difficult, go hang out with some friends that are going to pump you up and feel more positive. And with that being said, that's what I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for liking, sharing, and commenting, and subscribing, and liking, and whatever. And so I'll see you guys for next month.